So I was back in middle school this week.
Oh, set you back a grade?
One would think, actually, wrong preposition. I was back at middle school
Ah,
this week, specifically where I'd gone to middle school
okay.
from 1989 to 1992. So it's been a while, and the building has been modernized, quite a bit of it. New plaster walls in places. A lot of the old fire hazards had been taken away. The stuff that had been grandfathered in because it was built in the 19th century. I should probably back up a bit and say where this is and why it's a topic of conversation. But it gets into a sort of broader trend for why we like to film in Tacoma and how things can change so quickly in independent film production that you wind up back at your own middle school with a couple of weeks to go before production. So where I went to middle school at a place called Annie Wright, which I know you're familiar with because Hannah went to Charles Wright.
Yeah. Well, did she briefly go to Annie Wright? My God, I can't even remember. She went to many different schools around Tacoma, so no, I don't think she did. Anyway, continue.
Anyway,
apologies.
What I remember off the top of my head is Charles Wright was a businessman, magnate, and his daughter Annie was his daughter. As is often the case in the parental relationship.
All right. I think I'm following.
Anyway, the school, Annie Wright, was founded in 1884 and is this red brick campus in North Tacoma, right above the bay. And the building, the campus, the facilities itself is just gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's run like an Anglican school. School uniforms. It's a boarding school, actually. It's we went to chapel 3 times a week. You had your dress uniforms for special occasions like lessons and carols at the end of the winter semester or the fall semester, I guess it would be, and for graduation. And when I was there, it started in '89. The 8th grade boys were the first generation of middle school boys who'd been allowed in the school.
Oh.
It had been co-ed through I think only 5th grade for a while. Originally, I believe it was an all-girls school. And the upper school has remained girls only until, I should say, probably, I think it's in the next couple of years. They're currently building.
Oh, really?
The boys' upper school on campus.
Oh, wow.
Out front, they have that very wide open lawn area with the brick that you walk down to get in, where they handle or where they would stage the graduation ceremonies in the spring if it's not raining. And the whole right side of that now is a steel scaffold that they're going to be open.
I gotta drive by there. Check that out.
It's quite impressive. It's changed, and I went there because children of faculty could go tuition free.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if that's the case anymore, but it was certainly a benefit for my sister and I. My mom was the piano teacher and voice teacher there for several years.
I remember you telling me that.
And
not that our audience necessarily knew that.
Not necessarily. And the school had just a wonderful aesthetic in it. Even if you go into the foyer now, the main entrance hall, and there's a portrait of Annie up at the top of the senior stairs going up and around, stairs going down, wings going off in either direction, old carpet. You can see the old rafters there, wainscoting, and deep, dark, old brown wood, scuffed by students over the last
generations
150 years, right? And most of the school used to look like this. But a lot of that was a fire hazard. Like this, the old all wooden spiral staircases and the mid-floor plunge down, almost like an attic that would go down from where my mom's office was. I was told would effectively be a chimney if the building caught fire. So all that's been updated and is up to code now. And I should probably say why we were going back there. One final thing about this. When in college I started reading Harry Potter, Hogwarts was Annie Wright.
Oh, okay.
It was an expansion on Annie Wright.
Okay.
Not just the interiors, but the exteriors itself. The old brick, the old world look to it, the old antique feel. And the reason why I was back is our first 2 locations for the Bard School had fallen through.
Oh.
Yes. So one thing I have always loved about Tacoma is, and you should know if you're not from the region, Tacoma is not the 2nd largest city in Washington State.
No.
It's the 3rd.
Yeah.
It's after Spokane. And as much as there's a rivalry between Seattle and Tacoma, they're in different leagues.
Yeah.
there was a time when they weren't, when settlers were first,
Mm-hmm.
carving their living out of a pristine
Yeah,
location.
Seattle and Tacoma were vying for dominance in the area, and Tacoma was winning.
They were vying for a command of the rail hubs.
Mhm.
They both have, and I think this is still true, the fifth and sixth deepest harbors in the
Mhm.
U.S.,
Yeah.
which makes international shipping great for both of them.
Yep.
And, ultimately, Tacoma lost.
Do you know why Tacoma lost? This is an interesting thing.
Tell me.
The reason Tacoma lost is because Tacoma, in its rivalry, said, okay, we want to become a more legitimate city. So we are going to outlaw prostitution. So all the sailors started going mostly to Seattle when they came into harbor. There was a heavy preference for Seattle, where they had the vibrant seamstress union, which is what the folks involved, employed in prostitution, called themselves the seamstress union.
The vibrant seamstress union.
Yes.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's why Seattle won, is Tacoma outlawed prostitution.
That makes so much sense now. Yeah, so Seattle won that race. Tacoma feels these days like a city-sized town.
Mm-hmm.
We have an old downtown with a lot of tall buildings that just are mostly empty. A lot of the industry, a lot of the financial
Mm-hmm.
industry that was here has since left for greener pastures.
Yeah.
And has left a city with wonderful bones
Mm-hmm.
in it. And this is one of the great advantages that Tacoma has, I would even say over Seattle, is that you can actually navigate through Tacoma because there's not the traffic. and a lot of Tacoma's old bones, its 19th century infrastructure has not been torn down for new housing or
Right.
or business zoning
Mhm.
areas. We're not seeing an Amazon take over Tacoma, and so
Yeah.
you have in Tacoma a lot of this wonderful old architecture that has survived
Mhm.
and that you have access to. That's just lying around in places. You've got Union Station right there on
Mhm.
Pacific Avenue, the Weyerhaeuser Mansion, which we'll get to in a moment,
Okay.
up in residential North Tacoma, in that
Mhm.
wonderful area there. The Elks Temple. Right
Oh,
at
yeah.
the end, and it's not just the Elks Temple. There are a number of fraternal orders. The 19th century clubhouses like the Masons and Sons of Norway and such.
And the
Knights
Knights of Pythias,
Temples of
yeah.
the Knights Pythias are there. The Elks Mansion, the Elks Club has lain dormant for decades, but now
Yeah.
McMenamins
is
is
sort of-
renovating that. And
it's gonna be I'm excited to see
it's great.
how that turns out.
It's right. If you've ever been to Tacoma and you take Highway 705, which takes you up and over, it gives you a nice view of the city because
Yeah.
it's one of those skyways, and then it deposits you at this T intersection,
Mhm.
and right there in front of you is this old moldering white building with a stone elk head about
Yeah.
4 stories up, looking down at you, right next to the Spanish Steps where
we filmed,
where
Gamers.
where we stole the shot
Yes.
from the original Gamers.
We didn't exactly have permits.
That's
yeah.
true. I mean, you've also got in Point Defiance, where we
Mhm.
filmed a bunch of stuff over
Oh,
the
yeah.
years. You've got the second largest city park in the United States after this one you may have heard of in Manhattan.
What is that?
It's in the center.
Okay.
of the
No,
city.
I can't think of the name. Yeah, it's in the center.
Yeah.
And there's other stuff around it. It's very
Middle.
I don't know. Middle. I don't think I'd go so far as to say central to the city. It'll come to me in a moment.
We can look it up.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a high school that's a castle
Yeah.
there. A school where
Rose Hotel. Yeah.
Stadium High School, where my children would go to high school, and where my grandfather did go to high school.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So Tacoma is beautiful.
Mm.
The bones of
It
it,
is,
that
yeah.
you can see. And I first discovered the Weyerhaeuser Mansion when I was in college, as doing a drive in North Tacoma because I loved the area, and happened upon this mansion.
Yeah.
Again, red brick mansion with a brick wall, its own ruined, dilapidated greenhouse,
Mhm.
outbuildings and such, towering up to a peaked roof about 4 stories high, and wondering, what is this place and how
Yeah.
have I not heard of it? And so did some research, and at the time, the Weyerhaeuser Mansion, also called Hadaway Hall,
Mhm.
was Tacoma Baptist Seminary. It had become
Huh.
a seminary for training of missionaries and
Oh,
the
wow.
like. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then it was sold to Corban University. It became a satellite campus for Corban, which is a Christian university run out of Portland, I believe. And that was the entity that we spoke to when we filmed season 2 of Journey Quest there and made it our Bard school. Like I got a tour of the place and I was just astounded by the beauty of it. You know, all old beveled wood inside, beautiful staircases, ballrooms. We saw that side office which we turned into the headmistress's office. And then you had that magnificent view of the sound from the exterior there. And we were looking forward to returning there to film season 4.
Yeah.
It has changed hands a couple of times since then. The closest we were able to find was that I think it's owned now by a nonprofit based out of Lakewood with designs on turning it into a school of some sort or another. But we, for the life of us, could not get anyone on the phone. We couldn't find any information. No, and no one was returning our calls. It led to the point where Tony basically mandated that I go there in person to try to find some contact information. So I loaded the kids into the car because they're cute and are good icebreakers.
Right.
And just went and started driving around. And the closest we got was there is a salon operating out of the building right next to the ruined greenhouse. And I had to check. I checked it on Google Maps as well. I was like, is this for real that there's a salon at this address? Yes, there is. So we went in there, said, hi, don't have an appointment. I have a question about the gigantic, beautiful mansion you're operating right next to. And this is kind of where the trail ends. It was as close as we were able to get. They said they can't give me any information there, but I could leave a message. And so I wrote a handwritten note down and left it with the hairdresser.
Wow.
And that was the end of that trail.
Wow.
So we don't have our Bard school again, so we needed to find something other. So, we had a backup plan, and that was the Rust Mansion, named after the Rust family. I forget what they did. There's another, magnate. I don't know if he was a timber baron as well, but this is a place where you actually may have seen. It's where we filmed the Orcish Beefcake calendar, which mercifully ends here in just about a week and a half.
In Latholm?
Yeah, and as you saw from the photographs there, they have a number of lovely all-wooden rooms, a fireplace. They had that peacock room with the stained glass, beautiful staircases, and a pretty nice garden outside in a stone wall. I believe it was a stone wall. I'm going to remember it as a stone wall.
Okay.
But it's been sold to Windermere. So, again, can't get in.
Right.
And so it was like, okay, well, that was our secondary. Our fallback. Let's start looking at some other places around here. And I was starting to think, well, there was the Landmark Hotel in Des Moines where we scouted when we were looking for the Court of Karn in season 2. There's also Thornwood Castle, which is this gorgeous location down in Lakewood that has been used as film sets before. Yeah. It was Rose Red was filmed there, and they got back to us and said, yes, that would be $19,000. And we said, thank you for your time. Yeah, because they've...
Jesus.
Right? For a 2-day shoot. So, started thinking, what other places do I know? And I still have some contacts and friends at Annie Wright. So we are going to an actual school to film the Bard School.
That makes sense.
It does make sense. And it looks like, if everything happens according to plan, and I was there on Monday scouting it out with Tony and his 5-month-old daughter. Again, you bring the kids as an icebreaker.
Right, yeah.
We may be filming in the Great Hall. We may be filming in this beautiful courtyard around back that's been built since I was there.
Oh, okay.
And would actually give us the sort of 360-degree shot that we need for reasons I will not go into here.
Yes.
So I found myself at a place I'd last been a student during the first Bush administration. Even encountered... one of my teachers, who is now an administrator, and who, even though I'm 41 years old, I still could only refer to her as Mrs. In my mind. It felt wrong to call her by her given name. But it was nice to go back and lovely to live in a city that has so many of these wonderful locations that have survived sort of the American obsession with newness and progress. And
I think after a time, like once you hit whatever this event horizon is, you get to the point where people want to keep it like it is. They're like, oh, now it's old enough that it's cool enough, that the styles have moved on enough that we have a fondness for this more classical style.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess I don't know how many buildings from, say, the 80s we're going to feel that way about, but I think, when you go back far enough, there's sort of a definite style to architecture that was not just functional.
And I would cite that as one of the reasons why we're still making film,
Mhm.
because we've been able to far exceed our production budget in
Yeah.
production value
Mhm.
by using what was there.
Yeah.
And Tacoma we've featured in pretty much every project we've done.
Yes.
Going all the way back to, we filmed Demon Hunters at PLU,
Mhm.
obviously. We did The Gamers in Point Defiance Park and Zoo. Recently we returned there.
Yeah.
We actually filmed not only parts of The Gamers, but much of Season 3 in Fort Nisqually.
Yeah.
In Tacoma.
Yeah. Some of the Gamer Shadow Menace was there. I know at least the New Moon Season 0 piece. The woods I'm running into naked are there in Point Defiance.
Yeah, the Daggy's Tavern was in a
Fort
church.
Nisqually.
No,
Oh,
it was in a
no, that's
church
right. No, yeah, that's right.
There on I Street.
The exterior of it
The
was
exterior
Fort
of it was Fort
Nisqually,
Nisqually.
but
The interior
was
in the church's wonderful fellowship hall that had an actual stage there.
Yeah.
That
was fantastic.
That the art department could dress and make it look like a dwarven burlesque. Where do you find that? In Tacoma.
Yeah, that's right.
So, very, very glad to be adding Annie Wright to that list.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Matt Vansel.
And I'm Nathan Rice.
And this is the 4th episode of what is still called Here Be Dragons, but may not be much longer.
We may have found, thanks to fan contribution,
Jim Wrench.
yes, a new title.
Mm-hmm. Given that we have yet to, in I think 4 hours of podcasting, talk about dragons in any substantive context.
Right.
But the word that was suggested was Coddiwomple.
Yes, I think it's a fantastic word once you know the definition.
Which is?
Which is to travel in a purposeful manner towards a vague destination. Seems really appropriate for what we're doing.
It seems to be. So we'll probably in the new year be adopting that as the name of the podcast.
Episode 5 of Coddiwomple.
Coddiwomple. There. So, what have you been working on? What would you like to promote?
What have I been working on? Last time we did an episode, I mentioned that I was in a play. I'm still in that play. It's actually up and running now.
Mm-hmm.
It runs through Christmas Eve, takes a couple days off for Christmas and the day after, and then picks up again with the performance all the way through New Year's Eve. So if you're around Olympia and you want to see a fun, lighthearted musical set in the 40s, you should come see the play. If you don't want to see that, or you don't live in the area, well, you can go fuck yourself. I mean, I understand why you didn't make it.
What is the name of the play and where can you see it?
It is 1940s Radio Hour, which you can find at the State Theater run by Harlequin Productions in Olympia.
That sort of title and location helps.
Yes, yes.
Very
Sometimes.
Cool. If you actually want them to come.
Right. I always want them to... Anyway, so what was the...
Oh, is there anyone else in the cast that folks might recognize?
Let's see. Anyone else in the cast folks might recognize? I don't know if there's anyone from our stuff. Did Xander Layden ever do anything with us yet? I know he will be at some point.
I'm not sure.
I know I can guarantee you we're going to try to recruit him for something at some point.
Well, there we go then.
So,
Speaking of
maybe
which, maybe recruiting for something. What else are you working on?
Let's see, there is a Zoe project. I don't know how much exactly I'm allowed to say about it that I'm involved in working on. It's going to involve, instead of being strictly live streamed, parts of it are going to be live streamed, but a lot of it's going to be taken together and edited into an actual, like, half-hour to hour show.
Okay.
That is then, you can download, you can watch on, I don't know, YouTube or the Fantasy Network, whatever it is. They're kind of trying to figure out ways to take both the live stream content but also to kind of condense it down. Because there are a lot of people who, like, for example, like Critical Role, a lot of people are fans of that, but not everyone wants to watch 3 hours of people gaming. So in order to, because we also think there's some interest in that, if we take that, condense it down, and just put in the parts that are interesting, and then have other parts that are pre-recorded as an episode, then we think that might be a more interesting format that might get more people to watch.
So would it be you live stream to a watching audience and then edit afterwards? So
So
there's
it
two
would-
versions of each episode?
Sort of. I mean, the current thinking, and this is not set in stone, is that we'd live stream the actual gaming part,
Okay.
but that we'd have an idea for different parts of the episode, and so there'd be pre-recorded segments like pieces of an episode. Then they'd put the live stream stuff in, but just cut down for the important parts.
Got it.
And then finish out the pre-recorded parts of the episode.
Okay.
So some parts would probably be recorded, then they do the whole live stream for people who want to watch the whole
Sure.
thing.
There's a like
Yeah.
Masters of the Metaverse has a
Yeah.
very loyal following.
Yeah, they
there
do.
That loves the format.
Yeah, and some people love that, and some people look at Masters of the Metaverse and they're intimidated. They're like, it's 3 hours each and there are 50 episodes. Like, how am I ever going to catch up? And so Masters of the Metaverse is fantastic, but it sometimes has that large hurdle to getting into it, which is too bad because it's so good.
It's
So
so
we
good.
wanted to...
But it has a steep buy-in.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So we wanted to try and make something that had a much easier buy-in, where if you were tuning in on episode 44, even if you hadn't seen what came before, you could still tune in and enjoy that episode.
That makes a lot of sense.
So,
Is there any sort of timeline on that?
no. Right now, not that I know of. Actually, I take that back. I know they want to have it up and running for Gen Con for reasons that I don't think I can go into.
Probably not.
All right.
But
So,
we know that Gen Con
soonish.
so yes, because Gen Con being in August again
Yes.
this year, I think? All right.
I believe, to
All right.
the best of my recollection.
And I understand there is an entirely different mystery project you cannot talk about.
There is, and that one's entirely on me. I will be talking more about it as I find out how viable it really is going forward. I will just say it involves role-playing. Ooh. Like tabletop role-playing, not I dress up as the doctor and you dress up as the
I don't know that you want
shepherdess.
I don't know that you want to limit yourself at this point.
I mean, I guess you're right. Do you have a shepherdess outfit?
So I've been working on a number of things right now, mainly prep for JQ 3.5.
Yes.
Which is, I mean,
Taking you to Annie Wright.
taking you to Annie Wright, but also, it's small stones in the pond, a lot of ripples,
Yeah.
right? It's like,
Mhm.
I'm going to need to rewrite some of the scenes just to take the new locations into account.
Right.
Any changes in dialogue involving the orcs involves also a lot of retranslation,
Oh, yeah.
which may also require the coining of new words if I can't really get the level of nuance out of
Right.
what exists. I'm going to be putting together a backer scene as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, for the folks who are coming out for that. We know where that's going to be shot now.
Okay, great.
And then, of course, it's just all the production documents and double checking and making sure, do we
Mhm.
have these costume pieces that we need? Do we have these state changes for these costumes or props planned
Right.
out?
I think I know what you're.
Yeah.
what
Do we
you're
have extras for the days that we need them? Do we have the proper
Right.
set dressing for the places we need them? Because some of them, there's one room in particular that I didn't find a perfect fit
Mm-hmm.
at Annie. So at our next tech scout with the production designer, we're going to have to look at it and say, can we pull this off here? If not, can we look at some other spots?
Right.
Because it's like, how much furniture, how many things do we have to pull in to dress it to the point that
Right.
it looks realistic versus wouldn't it be easier to look for another location?
Right.
And this is one of those situations where this one of, I think, 4 locations at the Bard School is one we could do pretty much anywhere, but because of the schedule and because film is paid for by the day,
Right.
insurance, actor rates, crew rates,
Mhm.
camera rentals, it's all done by the day. It has to be done the same day that the rest of the Bard School
Okay.
stuff is done. So we have to find a place at the Bard School to make this bit
Or
work.
real nearby.
Or real nearby, because company moves are such a pain.
Yeah.
So mainly that's what I've been working on is gearing up for production at the time of year when everyone's slowing down and relaxing. It's my circadian rhythms are out of whack. And then also what I've been working on, The Stray and the Hole in the Stars has been fulfilled.
And I have my copy. Thank you.
You're welcome. It is on Amazon now if you'd like to pick up a softcover copy. We're still working. There's been some issues getting the ebook to populate on Amazon, and Amazon actually tells me it's something technical on their end.
Huh.
So I'm just glad that they've been responsive. I'm hoping,
That's
of course,
fantastic.
to get that up before everyone spends their Amazon gift cards.
Yeah. That's. You mean their Christmas Amazon gift cards? So by the 26th,
It
yeah.
doesn't have to be Christmas Amazon gift cards, but probably.
But probably it's when they're
most
getting
likely.
most of them.
Yeah. So that's what I've been working on.
Oh, right on.
Thank you. So, what are you reading?
So right now, like I say, I've been pretty involved in the play. I haven't had as much time for pleasure reading, although I have 2 books sitting there ready for me. One of them, you may have heard of it. It's called The Origins of Consciousness. It's this octopus book. Very interesting. I'm sure we'll talk about it someday. But I also finally got my copy of The Wolves of the Calla so that I can continue the Gunslinger series.
All right.
Interestingly, I looked at all of the half-price book places in the area because I generally like to save money on my books.
Sure.
Couldn't find it anywhere. I could find like most of the other books in this series, but I couldn't find that one. So finally, I just busted down. I was like, fine, I'm going to order it on Amazon. I ordered it on Amazon. The other day, I'm in a thrift store, and my family has a tradition that we've started recently of you buy everyone something ridiculous from a thrift store. So, like, for example, and it doesn't, I mean, if it's flavored to them, great. Otherwise, it's just ridiculous. Like, I got my mom this little figurine of a Christmas moose, but it's got 4 holes, like 2 in each antler, and it's a toothbrush holder. So it's this ridiculous little thing. I was like, this is hilarious. My sister's
Christmas moose?
Yeah. I mean, like I say, just ridiculous stuff. I found this giant like lantern slash like a flashlight slash TV. That's apparently for like camping, I guess. Like it's like battery powered, but like it's this tiny ass TV, and it's on the same side as the lantern.
So you're
you
blinding
can't have,
yourself?
Yeah, you can't have the TV and the lantern on at the same time for any reason. I love watching the glare that I can't see this TV through. Yeah, I mean, so it's ridiculous stuff like that.
I think we spiked all over the place with the laughs, but that was worth it.
We'll bring it back down. You'll fix it in post.
Sure, I will.
Yeah. But while I was there, I happened to see a almost pristine copy of The Wolves of the Calla for like $3. And of course, because I look for my books in thrift stores very often. I just happen to be in that area.
Same here. One of my favorite places. Again, back to the wonders of Tacoma. The Tacoma Book Center, right by the Tacoma Dome, down by
that's one of the places,
Square,
yeah,
has I think it's about 250,000 books in there.
I love that place.
New, all of them used as well. Floor to ceiling shelves. I've been going there since high school. I think. Love that spot.
And then the other thing is for my secret project that I can't talk about. I've been poring over the 5e D&D books because reading isn't exactly right. I've really more been studying to make sure I really understand this system.
So you're getting into gaming.
Yeah, strangely. I know, it's a real departure for me. Cool. How about you?
I have been reading Michael Pollan's new book, How to Change Your Mind, which has one of the longest subtitles I've ever seen. The full title is How to Change Your Mind, What the New Science of Psychedelics Teaches Us About Consciousness, Dying, Addiction, Depression, and Transcendence.
That is a long secondary.
Right. So Michael Pollan, who, if you know him, you may know him most from his culinary works, like The Omnivore's Dilemma.
And his work in Monty Python.
Yes. Michael Palin.
Oh!
Thank you.
I was confused.
And I have another of his works called A Place of My Own, which is about when he built himself his own writing cabin.
Oh, wow.
On his grounds in New England. And I had trouble reading that because it was a very stressful time, and I didn't want to read about someone else's perfect little writing space he was able to create. On his salary, on his property.
Dude. Fuck you.
Pretty much. Anyway, I enjoyed his. I've enjoyed his miniseries on streaming, and I've always been very interested in psychedelics.
Yeah.
In particular, the psilocybin mushrooms, which grow in this region.
Yes, they do.
And which I have experienced.
No, I have yet to do that, although I'm interested. I just don't know how to identify the suckers.
Well, it's I'm going to turn off the microphone for this, but...
And we're back!
Your suspicions were correct.
Yes.
That is where you should look. Anyway, it's a fascinating read because I'm only about halfway through it. I'm right before the moment I'm right before the section labeled travelogue.
Okay.
So he hasn't experienced them himself, including I think it's the 3 trips that he takes are psilocybin, or known as the magic mushrooms, LSD, and DMT.
Oh, okay.
And the first part of the book is all about the history of how it came to be. It begins at this I think it was I forget, 60th anniversary or something of the discovery of LSD, and the man, no, it was to honor the 100th birthday of the man who discovered LSD.
Oh, there we go.
And it was odd in that the guy was there for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like he was still around and was ruminating
it was 100 and
on his contributions to
that LSD keeps you preservative
society.
Qualities, yeah.
And there's a bunch of it of the history of how it was considered a miracle drug for in the 1950s for curing things like schizophrenia and alcoholism. It helping patients facing end-of-life anxiety, but really got vilified in the 60s. And part of it, I just finished the section on history, and Pollan goes into detail about how, the counterculture of the 1960s would have arisen without LSD.
Right.
The Vietnam War saw to that, as well as changes in music and business and the Cold War. However, never before has there been such a break between generations as there had between, say, the greatest generation and the baby boomers, because so many of them experimented in psychedelics, and it had its footprint all over the counterculture.
Yeah.
In its music, in its fashion, in its philosophy, in its worldview. And so you had this massive cohort of young people who had experienced a rite of passage that their parents hadn't.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
So you didn't, instead of seeing a gradual shift in perspective of one another, there was this radical break that you can argue the right wing in this country has been fighting to undo.
Interestingly, I
for the last,
think
60-some years.
So much of the right wing is now made up of the baby boomers, though.
Yeah, that's true.
Interestingly, I mean, went from free love to keep them out of my backyard.
What's been fascinating to me also, I'm going to use the word fascinating over and over again because I really am curious about it, exploring the mind and other altered states of consciousness, is how, one, it's not dangerous in and of itself. LSD, the mushrooms, unless you get the wrong mushroom, it's not going to kill you. Where there have been deaths or whatnot is when people, if they have a bad trip or an unsupervised trip and they wander into traffic or they fall off a cliff or they do something like that. It's not the substance itself.
Right.
In fact, when it was still being studied in actual medical institutions, one of the ideas behind it was this is a medicine that can improve people who are well.
Yeah.
And two was the near uniformity of experience, trending toward the ineffable and the spiritual, the disillusion of the ego, and a feeling of oneness and connection with all things. That it's something that can permanently change worldview and perspective by broadening it into a sense of universal oneness and love, which seems pretty neat.
Yeah, I know. I mean, obviously, anything I've read does not begin to touch, I bet, on as deep as this book goes, but I know I've done some reading that specifically said, because at least while you're on it, it does some alteration to the wiring in your brain, where there are different connections that are not normally made.
Yeah.
And so not only does it produce like some of those feelings that people afterward tend to be able to make connections between things they weren't able to make before. I think this might be rumor. I remember reading at some point that Steve Jobs had some semi-frequent, at least, use of LSD to kind of, and it attributed it to. And again, this is something I've heard. Do your research, because I have not. So I am, of course, wildly throwing out a story that I have no reason to believe is or is not true. Like a responsible.
It's actually in the book, the history of that.
Oh, perfect.
That LSD was all over Silicon Valley and helped some of the, apparently there was a famous trip someone took in 1968 in which
literal or figurative?
Well, figurative trip.
Yeah.
On LSD, that during that one session, a developer came up with the mouse, the graphic user interface, and a bunch of other things we just take for granted, hyperlinks.
Wow.
And all came all. It was able to visualize all that while on one specific trip. It's also apparently to this day a lot of the tech companies will do routine microdosing of their employees to just have them start make these connections that they're not otherwise, help visualize.
I've read about microdosing. I'm actually fascinated by the idea. Again, fascinated. We're going to use that term all the time. But yeah, just the idea that these small amounts that don't necessarily affect how you go about your day, but that still just subtly change the way your brain makes those connections to be able to, like you said, broaden it. I'm fascinated by that idea, and I kind of always wanted to figure out how the hell to do it.
Well, we're starting to see a bit of relaxation in the strictures against use of LSD, or at least studying it anymore. Because in the 60s, I think it was in the 60s or the 70s, it got labeled a class 1 substance.
Yeah.
So it's up there with cocaine and the hard regulated drugs.
Right.
But yeah, they're looking at researching into it again for ways to deal with end of life anxiety and to cure alcoholism and treat other mental problems that have physiological effects. Not sure where I'm going with that anymore. So
except that that's what the book's about, and it's a cool book.
I'm really enjoying it. Can't wait to get into the travelogue section and see what he talks about there. Specifically because, okay, I remember what it was that one of the things that the scientists studying it lamented was that so many of the experiences people had were spiritual that it started to erase the lines between science and mysticism, and that was one of the reasons why I think it was banned, is because it really is an acid. It dissolves things. It dissolves the concepts of self. It dissolves the concepts of state. It blurs the line between science and mysticism. It blurs the line between individuals and a collective. Like, that's one thing they saw over and over again that led to the spiritual experience was, I cease to think of myself in terms of I. I seem to exist in a larger state enveloped by some sense of a cosmic parent or universal love. To the point where, like, and some of the famous people who took trips on this, Aldous Huxley became a massive adherent of it. He wrote a book called Doors of Perception that I'm interested in reading. Became a real devotee of it. There was one thing that I'm hoping Pollan gets more into when he describes it was a concept by a French philosopher named Henri Bergson, who theorized that consciousness does not originate from within the brain, but from outside of it, and that what the human brain is more like a radio transceiver that is receiving a signal and that operates.
Interesting.
And so then if you were to study the human brain as a transceiver, when it breaks, when we're dead, well, obviously there was nothing that lived beyond that, unless it came from elsewhere.
Okay.
So again, raising questions we have no way of studying.
So sort of like the soul is external to the mind and the body.
Yes.
And so that when the body and mind die, the soul was already somewhere else. It was just projecting into that vessel. The similarities in experiences that people have had make that something you can't necessarily dismiss. That's interesting.
It really is.
I wonder if that's, I mean, it sounds like that was influenced by Spinoza, who...
The God substance.
Yeah, he said that there aren't different... I mean, people were still kind of working with different theories on elements, and I think they were kind of starting to refine some of that at the time. I'm trying to remember my history on that. So let's come back to that. I may need to revise that. But what he said was there is only one element in the universe, and that element is God. And that everything that occurs is an expression of the infiniteness of this element.
That's nice.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that sounds kind of like a similar idea that at least all consciousness and life and thought is sort of all this one thing, and each individual is an expression of what that could be.
And the idea behind psychedelics is that they temporarily pull the curtain back or broaden your perceptions such that you catch a bit more of the world that this world exists alongside of.
Man, I'm getting me some mushrooms.
Transition. What are you watching?
What am I watching? Not my weight. Oh, God, I'm sorry. So right now, Hannah and I are making our way through the end of The Americans. So we're finishing up season 6. We've got 3 episodes to go. You watched The Americans?
I don't. I think you've mentioned it before, though.
It's actually really good. It's got some great commentary on on the U.S. culture, on the Cold War in general. Like it makes some really. It's just a fascinating take from the perspective of Russians who've been living here for 20 years and have started a family
They're
as
spies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But they came over very young.
Okay.
And the idea was to integrate them into American society. So, like, they have day jobs, they're members of their community, their kids are, in middle school and junior high, high school, wherever, depending on when during the series you're looking in. And so they have to be spies, but maintain their daytime cover. And, I mean, they've integrated into American life and absorbed a lot of those ideas. So sometimes they'll talk about, like, the ideas of, things in America, and they're like, hey, wasn't it better back home? Or, hey, there's, this is not the worst thing. I kind of like this, I'll be honest,
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very interesting sort of breakdown. But it's also fascinating, just the two main characters are absolutely fantastic, and the way they set them up and some of the choices they have to make. It's a great series.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
I would recommend it.
I recently finished a series called Age of Tanks.
Hmm.
That was only 4 episodes, so that
All
happened
right.
really quickly. And I mean, I clicked on it because I didn't want anything I had to get too invested
Yeah.
in. And I was like, oh, 4
I know how that
episodes, I
goes.
can handle this. It was not what I was expecting, actually. Turns out, first off, it is a French production.
Oh.
As even though it's in English, it's clear from the graphics and from the titles. When they're interviewing the expert from the British Tank Museum, his name comes up in French. I should say his title comes up in French.
Oh, okay.
Which I think is appropriate, because you don't think of necessarily as France as a great tank power.
No, not really.
But, I mean, it was the first country the tanks really rolled over, so I
guess they have
think that's
first-hand
fair.
experience, yeah.
And
The business end.
of the 4 episodes, the first 2 obviously were about the tanks'
Mhm.
emergence and then in World War II. And one thing that it really underscored was just how much less material the Central Powers had in World War I,
Mm-hmm.
and how expensive it is to build, maintain, and develop new tanks. Like at the times that, and some of the facts I didn't know this, apparently the first British tanks came out at the Somme in 1916. And even though they terrified the Germans were able to train their artillery on them and blew
Mhm.
a lot of them to hell.
Yeah.
You think of the first tanks were not meant to necessarily, the idea was to be a ship on land.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much to carry around a massive central turret as it was to have downward-facing gun emplacements so they could drive onto a trench and just shoot down into it. And so the moment they showed up at the Somme, the French were developing their own, the British were developing their own, the Germans were developing their own. These massive, I think it was 11 to 18 man land ships.
Wow.
That at the time the Germans were so strapped they could afford to build 10.
Wow.
And then they doubled that when they saw how effective they could be to 20.
Still an 18-person tank crew.
18, something like that. 11 to 18. It was.
That's a land ship.
Yeah, it was a land ship, and that the tanks were used as, even though they did not do well at the Somme, they were used as in the British press as this, wonder weapon, and we're gonna bring them to the towns to raise money via war bonds and let people see them, and they're tank toys for the children and tank propaganda. It was like it's the new horse in many ways. And then of course episode 2 was all about the World War II tanks and the Panzers developed in secret, and then the T-34, this great design that really influenced a lot of Russian design from that point forward. And I figured it was going to be multiple episodes on the World War II era tanks. Not so much.
Really?
No, the 3rd episode went into the Cold War tanks. And I did not know this. And again, this is looking at something from a European perspective rather than as an American perspective. Was we look at, World War II, it's over. No, it's not. That's the halfway point. It went into how the tank became, the T-55 in particular, this Soviet tank, became not only a symbol, but a tool for holding the other Warsaw Bloc countries in check. Specifically like in the war, not the Warsaw, the Budapest uprising, was it, in Hungary? Or Prague? I forget. See, I don't know my Cold War history very well. But how it was used to break the riots and break the protests was you send a tank in until people figured out you could start tossing Molotov cocktails into them and force the tankers out of it, but also went into the few places where, even though the Cold War never got hot, the Soviet Union and the U.S. and NATO never fought each other directly. They did through a number of proxy wars.
Mm-hmm.
They went into, and they started interviewing tank commanders.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the astonishing thing. They interviewed a German Tiger commander from World War II who was still around, and a Soviet T-34 commander who was still in his uniform. Half of his chest is covered in medals.
Oh wow!
And then they switched and were talking to an Israeli tank commander for the Yom Kippur War in 1973, where the Syrian tanks, which were again the Russian, I think the T-55s, were coming up, and they had British tanks at that time. And the reason they were able to hold them off really well is because they had the high ground in the Golan Heights, and their guns had more range of traversing. And these T-55s, because of their design, could only traverse their guns 9 degrees.
Oh, that seems like a design flaw.
And so the Israelis were able to just rain death down upon the approaching.
Yeah, because they had such a small area of ground where they could actually aim to hit.
Yep, and went all the way up into discussing I think it was the largest tank engagement, not the largest tank battle, because that was Kursk, was in the Gulf War. And when we actually got to see the T-72 Russian tanks against the American M1A1 Abrams. And one thing that was fascinating is the reason why the Russian tanks have that rounded look, and the NATO tanks have that very angular
bulky
look,
or blocky,
is this type of armor that was developed in a British facility, jointly by the British and the Americans, that could shrug a hollow discharge weapon. It would be, and that if it was some sort of I don't even remember how exactly it works. Matt Shimkus could tell you, I'm sure. But that something that would punch right through solid steel would hit this composite, blow the top of it off, and then a rubber-like substance would fill up the gap there. Anyway.
Wow.
Yeah. And the last episode was really about the twilight of the tanks, and it was raising the question of, are these viable weapons of war anymore? Because we saw, and we've seen, they're terrible for urban fighting, because like they're talking to some of the American tank commanders in the Second Gulf War, in the Iraq War, that they're great at nailing stuff at a distance, but you're going through
get up close,
and all of a sudden there's a tank that's right there. It's everyone's scrambling mad.
Yeah.
And it's hot. You can't see what you're doing. If your tank gets hit, it's a death trap for all of you. But on top of that, they are so expensive to build and to research and to create new ones that a lot of countries are just saying we don't need them anymore. Canada has ended its tank program. And the ones that we even still have in service, the Abrams, were developed in the 70s.
Right.
But apparently the Russians shocked everyone in 2014 or 15 when they unveiled plans for a new tank, the T-14, which has only a 3-man crew that is in a separate compartment sealed off from the rest of the tank, and has an auto loader in its turret.
Okay. As
to whether it's viable or not.
So with only a 3-man crew, is it smaller then to be able to?
I don't know. I mean, it's not like the Putin's government was giving out the specs, but it was a pretty interesting 4-episode series to check out. Age of Tanks, that was on Netflix.
Age of Tanks.
I think it was on Netflix or Amazon Prime. One that I know is on Amazon Prime is one we just started, Man in the High Castle.
Oh, I love that show.
Which I thought I would have gotten into earlier, because it's one of the it's based on the book by Philip K. Dick, and is considered one of the masterpieces of alternate history. And I watched, this is the 3rd time I watched the pilot. And I tried it before and it just didn't take for some reason. But we're about 4 episodes in and are quite enjoying it.
Yeah. I liked the first episode. It got me interested, but I think it was probably by the end of the 2nd or 3rd episode that I was hooked.
One thing that might have colored my earlier look at the show was that the pilot was filmed in Seattle.
Right.
The show itself was not.
Right.
Which is a bit of a shaky fist moment.
Yeah. No,
for the industry in the state.
I love Rufus Sewell in that.
Oh, he's magnificent.
So good.
So magnificent. Because you can see the honesty of his convictions. He absolutely believes in what he's doing.
And you'll see this as the series go, but he'll just sometimes, like, there are times the camera will just focus on him, and he's not saying anything. Like something's going on, and his expression is just like either subtly shifting, or it's just these small shifts in facial expression that are speaking volumes. It's fantastic.
I was happy to see one of my favorite character actors in there, Bern Gorman.
Yeah?
Who plays the marshal.
Oh yeah, he's from
Ton of stuff. Torchwood.
Yes, that's what I was thinking. Torchwood.
He was in Pacific Rim. I loved him in Turn, that Revolutionary War spy
I didn't see
show.
that one.
That's fantastic. 4
Okay.
seasons. I would highly recommend it. He goes.
Turn.
It's called Turn. Yes, I'll recommend that. In fact,
Okay.
I believe the whole series is on Netflix. And
Yeah, I've seen it there.
That was a show that I kept watching because I loved the production design rather than the characters. And the reason for that was the guy who's supposed to be our main character, I didn't find all that sympathetic.
Okay.
And I didn't find anyone else I could really root for. But the production design and the setting was just so fascinating because it's a spy ring that operates on the island of I think it's, what's the name of it?
Was it like the Culper Ring?
Yeah, the Culper Ring.
Yeah.
In Washington Spies.
Yeah.
And a guy who gets drafted into it against his will.
Huh.
The best character, like they've got one of the most chilling villains I've ever seen in television, Captain Simcoe, who, imagine an evil, foppish Matt Shimkus. Brilliantly played. And then Bern Gorman plays this guy who's the Setauket, that's the name of the town, on Long Island. Setauket. He plays the military commander of Setauket, who again begins as kind of a character who's easy to outmaneuver, but who goes through one of the most convincing badass growths, advancements this side of Wesley from Angel.
Oh.
And he's played by Bern Gorman,
fantastic.
who I absolutely love,
Yeah.
because even as his character, Captain, what was his name? Edwin Hewlett, Captain Hewlett. Even as Hewlett is advancing as a character, he never loses the parts of him that are weak.
Okay.
You know, so it's not like I've burned away the weakness and become this total badass. It's no, I'm becoming total badass despite my weakness, which is still constantly present in my mind. And he became one of the more sympathetic characters to me, even though he's British. He's one of the oppressors. And tragic story in there. I love the series as it went on.
Okay.
But the first season took a bit of time. Also, the guy who played Robert the Bruce.
Oh yeah, in Braveheart.
In Braveheart, plays captain of the Queen's Rangers in here, in the show. I'd say definitely check it out.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. Questions time.
All right, we have from Techroga. Techrogue. Took me a second. What happens when you load an anagram cannon into another anagram cannon?
That's the first question?
That is the first question.
You get a palindrome.
Do you?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think we were experimenting with that. Nothing really came up.
We tried pre-gaming it a bit.
Mana Crag Anon was the closest thing we got, I think.
If you put 2 N's in the mana, yes.
Right, yeah.
Sometimes they just don't work.
So it's from heaven.
From heaven, there you go.
Doesn't the mana from heaven have 2 N's, or no, maybe not.
Maybe, I don't know.
Damn it.
If you load an anagram cannon into another anagram cannon.
You blow up your cannon? I don't know.
I'll have to come back to that one.
Okay.
For which I mean I'm putting that in the drawer that I nail shut.
Okay. That sounds good. From Rival, do you prefer playing human or non-human characters?
It depends on the setting, really. Like, if we're talking a role-playing game, I usually like playing human characters. Because I like to be it's a matter of point of view.
Yes.
Right? If you're beginning at low levels, I like to play a human character because I like the gradual introduction of the weirdness of the setting.
Yes.
And a great place to begin from is from a relatable historical perspective. If we're doing something higher level campaign or weirder, sure, I'll play a non-human character or design something like that. Or if it's a video game, like say World of Warcraft, whatnot,
right.
I want to play every different option,
yes,
so that I can get the entirety, I can experience the entirety of the content. How about yourself?
So for role-playing games, I tend to play humans. I play non-humans when I think when I have an idea for a character where the fact that they are not human is integral to the character. I don't necessarily want to just play an elf because they have a +2 dex bonus. Now, I might be like, kind of want an archer. An elf would be a good archer. Do I have an inspiration for what this elf archer is that the elf part is important?
Yeah.
Not really. I'm probably going to go with a human and then just have a human archer because I can get anything you can play as a human. But I might go, oh, you know what? Maybe he, was the best archer and then, he did something and got, sent away by his people. So he's this bitter elf who would, I'm just as an example to pull something out of my butt this exact second. Like if it's integral. Usually, if I do play a different race, I'm going to play a dwarf because I know I can at least get some humor value out of dwarves.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
I can say that from personal experience. One thing I dislike is when a party is formed and nobody talks to one another ahead of time and you wind up with clone-like characters.
Yeah.
Or especially if the lore of the world is such that the non-human peoples are rare and mysterious and they only come here for reasons of great import, and then there's like 6 of them in the same group,
and there are no humans.
And there's no humans in it. It's like it's I mean,
which can be an interesting take,
can
but
it's that would be something that is remarked upon in every place that they went.
Yeah.
And no member of the group would have that sort of core knowledge that's necessary to navigate those early steps.
Yeah.
Which, if you can make that, if you're a good GM and you can wrap that into the story, that can become part of it.
Yeah.
That sort of alien perspective here.
But it does present an extra hurdle to the story.
And it's annoying. I remember this game I joined in college where there were 3 drow who had rejected the ways of their evil society, and they represented 60% of the party. It's like, sure, okay.
Why not?
Why not?
All right, what do we have? From Andy, are there defined orcish toasting rituals? What's it like getting drunk with an orc? What if that orc has a living room bathtub?
I think I can answer the first 2. This is a stacked question here. Are there defined orcish toasting rituals? Specifically toasting. Probably they vary by clan, I would imagine. And I would say yes. I don't know what they are, nor am I going to develop them now.
Probably involves a lot of headbutting.
Well, it depends on the clan. Are they militant? Are they civilized? Are they more civilized? Are they more on the traditionalist or the modernist spectrum? I would say that holidays are very important to orcs because their year begins and ends with hibernation, and the holidays are mileposts, for where they are in that progress, and a good marker for, are you going to survive? Are you going to have what is your chance of surviving this winter? Right. So toasts on holiday or occasions would be very important and would probably involve a degree of ritual that's local to the clan. What's it like getting drunk with an orc? Well, orcs aren't really gluttons, and they don't like not being in control. They're very fatalistic because the world hates them and is trying to kill them, and they're short-lived as it is. So orcs don't get drunk for fun because it's a matter of like, hey, you know what? This world that hates me, they refer to their name for Fartherall is Sordzor, which means the sad world. They're not going to do anything to make it easier for the world to kill them or to disadvantage themselves. So maybe in a moment of great depression or celebration, they might do it. So what's it like getting drunk with an orc? Probably an honor because they trust you enough to let themselves be vulnerable around you there. Also, it probably takes a prodigious amount of alcohol because orcs tend to be stronger and have more muscle mass that would so it would take more volume to get them drunk. What if that orc has a living room bathtub?
Do orcs have living rooms?
Some of them do.
No.
The Red Heels in Orcsport,
Okay.
the civilized orcs would probably have bathtubs. What if the orc has a living room bathtub? I think the Red Heels would find that gauche. I think that's my answer.
Okay. Let's see, what do we have? Also from Tech Rogue, what would cider made from the apple of life do if someone drank it? Here, ED.
Oh my. Okay. So we're making cider from the apple of life.
Yes.
First, we have to determine whether the apple of life can be damaged.
Well, you can eat it.
That's right, they can. So you could
So you
break
have to
its
be able to
skin.
break the
You
skin.
have to be able to break its skin. So you could actually damage an apple. It's not going to auto-heal or anything like that. You can't make cider from a single apple. So I imagine the apple of life. They're extremely rare, for one.
Yeah.
One might bloom in a millennium. So I imagine the bulk of the cider is not going to be
Actual apple of life.
apple of life. So the question is how much. Let's see. Well, I mean, the apple of life did resurrect an entire undead army. So let's say that it's still
bite each.
It's still
so one bite is
potent.
enough, maybe.
That's right. I guess that's true.
If you're going to do a whole army, so one bite is enough to resurrect a person. So if you make like a giant cask of cider, one apple being the apple of life.
So what would someone from the apple of cider made from the apple of life
So you get just a
do
little bit.
if someone drank it? So I imagine if they're undead, they would return to life permanently drunk.
All right. All right, that sounds good to me.
Fine, cannon stamp. There.
All right, from Paximo. Not a question, just saying Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to both of you.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you as well, Pax.
And Happy 2019, which I guess is the new year, which is kind of what you said to us and he said back to you.
You don't always have to have something to say.
But this is a show where we talk. So our next question is from Rob. Can we expect a sequel to The Stray and the Hole in the Stars? And will it involve Sandy?
Yes. Yes. There's a lot more story to go there.
That was very terse.
There was more to the question. It was in parentheses, more of Rob qualifying that Sandy experiences changes the nature of character arc.
Right.
Right. And that Sandy goes through significant ones.
Yes.
Yes, Sandy will. The plan is for Sandy to continue as the point of view character. I have no intentions of changing that. And like in The Stray, I think the only other POV character was Garrett for moments in his journey before they synced back up together.
Okay.
Hope I'm not giving away any spoilers here.
I know a lot of your early drafts of this
Okay.
that you've had over the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes, Sandy will continue as the point of view character, and the plan is to revisit a lot of the themes that were so prevalent in The Stray. So dreams and memory and confusion in particular, which all have a natural way to seep into the new story.
All right.
I am looking forward to working on that once I get out from behind this mound of other work.
It's Mound of Dead Bards.
Mound of Dead Bards. In this case, the Dead Bards include the semester. I finished the grading for that on Tuesday. All the prep work for Journey Quest 3.5, the new novel, and the new world book.
That seems like a lot.
Plus the semester that is beginning again in 2 weeks,
In 2
and
weeks.
I'm missing the first week of because I've got this shoot thing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that work was understanding enough to understand you had other work to do during the work.
You know, it's fine. I subbed for Masio twice in the last week.
Oh, yeah?
Last weeks of the semester because he was on another continent
Oh,
filming
There you go.
a documentary. Yeah.
it's kind of nice.
It was pretty cool.
Right on.
Yeah.
So, what's in your Mound of Dead Bards? Tell us here at Coddiwomple.
We're done, by the way.
Yeah, all finished.
Tie?
Food?
Oh. Level check, yo, level check, yo, and I say yo again.
Rap.